A curse is an appeal that is intended to cause misfortune and evil upon another person. Now, we've all heard of items being cursed and even entire families, but what about movies? The average movie takes about a year to make, and in that time it's obvious there are going to be some hiccups and incidents that take place that you could blame on a curse. But there are some movies where more than your average case of bad luck has happened. Add this to the fact that all of these are about paranormal activity or religion, and you can see why people think that something didn't want the production to go smoothly. Now, I'm not saying these films did stir up evil spirits, but when you hear the stories, it really does get you thinking. So sit back, hit those lights, and enjoy. The Exorcist. What better way to start this video than with The Exorcist, a 1973 movie that was one of the first of its kind to be released, that is loosely based on the supposed real-life demonic possession of a child called Roland Doe and his exorcism in 1949. The film caused people to faint in the cinema and is still considered one of the greatest horror movies of all time. So when you hear things that happened during filming, you would swear something evil was watching over and letting the people know that what they were making a movie about was not fictional. For starters, the set home of the McNeils was destroyed by a fire, but oddly, Regan McNeil, the 12-year-old possessed girl who the film is based around, was left completely intact. Then, in one of the scenes, the actress who played Regan's mum permanently damaged her back when her safety harness did not work correctly. The scream that she lets out in the movie is her real reaction to the pain. There were also very strange feelings of darkness on set that left the people involved wondering if they had made a mistake in making this movie. Then there are the deaths. 2 of the actors featured in it died before its release, and the brother of Max von Sydow, the man who played Father Merrin, also mysteriously died on the first day of filming. But the worst is the story of Mercedes McCambridge, the lady who provided the terrifying voice of Regan's demon. Life after filming was difficult, and his son ended up killing his wife and children before committing suicide. Now, we don't know the full story, but it's said that in his suicide note he was full of resentment towards his mother, to which of course people have linked to the demonic nature of the movie. To top everything off, in a complete fluke occurrence, The Exorcist post-production editing was done at 666 Fifth Avenue in New York City. So it could all be a coincidence, but there are too many strange deaths and occurrences surrounding The Exorcist for you not to see why people still believe that it stirred up something evil. The Possession. The 2012 film The Possession tells the story of a young girl who goes to a yard sale with her father and buys an antique wooden box. She discovers the hidden lock and opens it, releasing a malicious spirit called Dybbuk, an evil spirit from Jewish lore. The girl soon becomes possessed, and the film follows her father and his ex-wife of them trying to rid her of the evil that's taken over. It's all loosely based on a story from 2000 about an old wine box called the Dybbuk box that is currently owned by Jason Haxton that is said to have brought bad luck and tragedy to those who have owned it. Well, when filming for The Possession began in 2011, Jason Haxton asked the producer if he wanted to use the real Dybbuk box. He refused, saying he was scared of it, and actor Jeffrey Dean Morgan, who is a skeptic, also agreed not to have it on set, as it was not worth the risk of causing bad luck or even death. Shortly after rejecting the real box, strange things started to happen on set. Director Alban Edel was stood underneath a turned-off neon light when it suddenly exploded without explanation. He said that of all the neon lights he's been around, never has one exploded like this without reason. Jeffrey Morgan said this happened several times, and there were also other things that happened that were weird, such as cold drafts in closed-off areas and feelings of there being an invisible presence watching them. By the end of filming, the cast and crew were pretty freaked out, but the strangest was to come. About 5 days after filming had finished, a storage house in Vancouver that contained all of the props for the movie, including the replica Dybbuk box, completely burned to the ground. After investigations, there was no reason for how or why the fire started, and it's still a mystery to this day. So was it just a coincidence, or was the real Dybbuk box curse responsible? The Passion of the Christ. Directed and produced by Mel Gibson, The Passion of the Christ chronicles the last 12 hours of Jesus' life, and despite religion being such a controversial subject, the film was a success and went on to become the highest-grossing religious movie of all time. But making a film like this came at a cost for those involved, and there was believed to have been some kind of evil curse associated with it. Let's start with Jim Caviezel, the actor who portrayed Jesus Christ. He was physically harmed during the filming of some of the brutal scenes. He dislocated his shoulder, was accidentally whipped, and was also allergic to the heavy makeup he had to wear, which gave him headaches and skin infections. That sounds like your usual actor problems, but it gets worse. During some of the filming, Jim suffered from hypothermia and was also hospitalized with pneumonia. And how about this? He and the assistant director were struck by lightning. The saying is that lightning never strikes twice, but it did. The assistant director was struck again but was not seriously injured. When the film was finished, despite Caviezel's critical acclaim for his portrayal of Jesus, his career stalled and he has not starred in any high-profile films since. He said playing Jesus wrecked his career, which was something Mel Gibson warned him about. Speaking of Mel, people have linked his meltdown after filming to the curse. As soon after the movie was released, his 26-year marriage was in trouble, he was arrested for a DUI, and battled alcoholic addiction for some years later. Religion is and always has been a controversial subject, and many believe that when scenes and events are exaggerated to the extent they were in this film, along with violence and images of Satan, that you're asking for trouble. So was it all just a coincidence, or was something dark offended by the movie and was cursing those involved? What do you think? The Amityville Horror. If you know anything about the Amityville Horror, then you won't be surprised that the 1979 and 2005 film based on the paranormal activity at the Amityville house didn't come without its alleged curses. Now, if you don't already know about the story, it's said to be one of the most haunted homes in the world, after a man killed his father, mother, 2 brothers and 2 sisters there in 1974. While in the 1979 film, James Brolin, the actor who starred as George Lutz, the man who lived in the Amityville house and publicised its paranormal activity, had an encounter in the early hours when he was reading through the Amityville Horror book. When he reached an especially tense part in the story, his clothes that he had hung up ready for the morning fell to the ground. After this, he felt an eerie presence in the room and believed that there may be some truth to the events and agreed to sign up to the movie. Also, in 2005, Ryan Reynolds, who portrayed George Lutz in the remake, claimed while working on the movie, he would keep waking up at 3:15 in the morning. This was apparently the time that George Lutz would wake up each night terrified after moving into the Amityville house, and it was also the estimated time that the original killings took place in the house. Now, Ryan has said that he doesn't know if it was a subconscious decision for him to wake up at that time because he knew all about the story, or whether it was something that cannot be explained. In another incident surrounding the 2005 remake, just before filming got underway, the mysterious corpse of a fisherman was washed ashore very close to the set, and the original George Lutz unexpectedly dropped dead at the age of 59, just 4 weeks before the film was released. So were these strange events just a coincidence that could happen to any film, or was there something more sinister going on? What do you think? The Conjuring. In 1971, the Perron family moved into a rundown farmhouse in Harrisville, Rhode Island, and more or less from the day they moved in, strange things started happening. Now, I won't go into too much detail because there is an in-depth article about it on the Top 5's website, but the family were believed to have been plagued by a dark being that took over Mrs. Perron, and it was attempted to be removed by Ed and Lorraine Warren, who performed an exorcism. Fast forward to 2013, and a film called The Conjuring was released that was based on the Perrons' experiences, but during its filming there were several strange occurrences that scared the crew and cast, making them believe that paranormal beings were intervening. For starters, when screenwriters Chad and Corey Hayes started their research for the script, they would often have conversations with the Warrens via phone calls, but the calls would always have a lot of static interference and loss of connection that constantly interrupted their conversations. Lorraine Warren said this about it all. "We're about to expose the dark side of the dark side, and it doesn't want good to win. I'm surprised there isn't a lot more interference." But the phone calls are just the start of the series of strange events. While sitting in his office late one night working on the film, director James Wan had a scary experience when his new puppy suddenly started growling at something. James turned around to see what his puppy was barking at, but there was nothing there. The puppy kept barking and was tracking something around the room, and James stated that he was so freaked out and realised that the story behind this movie was affecting him in a big way. When filming started, most of the Perron family visited the set apart from the mother, who refused to go anywhere near it. When her family arrived, there was apparently a dust of wind that swirled around them, and at the same time, Carolyn, who was in Atlanta, felt a dark presence and fell to the ground, causing her to need hospital treatment on her knee. Then, shortly after this incident, the cast and crew had to be evacuated from the hotel they were staying in after it randomly caught fire. That isn't the end of the chaos on set though. The actress Vera Farmiga said she felt uneasy whenever she read the scripts and refused to rehearse them when she was alone or at night. Then the strangest thing happened when one day she opened her laptop and it had 3 digital claw marks slashed across the screen. She said she cannot explain it as no one had touched her laptop since she was last using it. After the film had finished, she had returned to her home and woke up the next morning to find 3 scratch marks on her thigh that were not there when she went to bed. She was pretty scared and cannot explain how they got there, but she said she was not going to let fear get the better of her. So were these events just a fluke, or was the apparent dark entity that had been haunting the Perrons returned after all those years, and targeted the crew and cast of The Conjuring? So there's 5 movies that are believed to have been cursed because of all the misfortune and strange occurrences that surrounded them. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next week for a super deep one that I know will get you thinking.